I'm actually going to get us started because we want to stay on time. I know you potentially have other things you might want to do tonight. My name is Shelley Rodrigo. I'm at Old Dominion University. Welcome to the 4C's 2015 Ignite session. Ignite's style presentations, if you do not know, are fast and furious and focused presentations. All our presenters have 20 slides. Those 20 slides are set on 15-second auto advance. That's 5 minutes. So sometimes the fun part of the presentation is folks not keeping up with their slides. You know, we like to talk. We're English folk, right? But our presenters are here. They're practiced. Their slides are beautiful. I know. I've looked at them all. And that's Ignite style. What Joyce is going to introduce is our theme for tonight and in connection with the conference.
Thanks for participating, everybody. I wanted the theme of the conference to be innovation. I chose risk and reward instead, but I really had this event in mind from the very beginning. I started thinking about the theme. Thanks so much for contributing and putting your proposals in. The Ignite evening has Ignite presentations as well as just a celebration of innovative culture. So we do a lot more in this field than just teach composition. And we do research, we invent stuff, we patent stuff, we start companies, and that was what I wanted to highlight. Those kinds of activities I wanted to highlight here in the Ignite evening. In fact, this is a good example. One of the people I had invited to participate was Beth Kolko, a graduate student friend of mine who works at the University of Washington. She had just either quit or taken a leave of absence to move to Silicon Valley. Her startup company, Shift Labs, just got accepted to the Y Combinator. It's a group of 20 companies who are doing medical devices, and they're all working together with, each one has $1.5 million seed money, and they're all working together to make things happen. That's a good example of an English major, a writing major, who is doing really innovative things. So she said, I can't make it to the Ignite because I got to go collect $1.5 million and move to the Bay Area to make low-cost, high-quality medical devices possible for the world. So I said, okay, that's pretty good excuse. But I think you'll find the rest of this evening is very similar. Innovative thinking, inventions, programming, really people who are doing something well beyond what we think of as the core of Ret Comp or writing studies. And this is a celebration of those efforts. So thanks so much for coming. We're going to have a great time tonight.
Our first presenter tonight is going to go very quickly. All I'm going to do is say basically the name of the title of the presentation and the person, and they're going to go. And we're going to turn this over very quickly. There will be a break in which you can hunt down and ask people questions, but we're not asking questions after presentations. So be forewarned. Write notes. Write your questions down on your planes. Toss it at the presenters after they're done. So our first presentation, The Endless University, a mobile application for teaching writing. Craig Ryan from Florida Atlantic University.
Hello. Thanks, Shelley. Before I attained my current position at Florida Atlantic University, I worked at mobile application development for a few years. And thus, at that time, I started thinking about what could we do to make an app that would engage students to help them be better writers, to be better communicators. Because I know we've all been in this situation where you look around your class and what do you see there? You know, they're looking down at their phones, they're looking down at their tablets, they're looking at their computers. So that's not necessarily a bad thing. Right? I may be preaching to the choir here, but we know that students become engaged with technology, and when I worked at the mobile application company, we would always be on our mobile devices, tapping away, looking up different apps, comparing notes. So how can we do the same thing? How can we get the application into the classroom? I'm still in the process of invention here, but one idea I had is maybe to use some push messaging, right? GPS location services and push messaging for app for composition studies. So the beauty of these kind of messages, right, is that you don't have to send them at a certain time. if you code the app correctly, the app does the work for you, right? They get their GPS location, certain date, certain time, and then the message comes through to them, to the students on their phone, because they always have their phones with them. Now we can also have more we can have more realistic, perhaps a business communication assignment, which is coming up next, where they have to meet a real-life deadline, simulate a workplace environment. I teach business communications, so they get a message, they have an angry client, they have 30 minutes to respond to them. They pull out their phone, they get the message, and they have the app can time the amount of time it takes for them to respond. The quicker they respond with a good message, the better the grade, so forth. Wait, Shelley, what's up with the slides? Okay, I know what to do. Okay, Google, show my slides. No. Okay, I didn't say show me slides. Then it's not quite working. Voice to text. It's an issue still, right? We're still working on it. Okay, Google, restore slides. No, not even close. Okay, well, let's let it go. But I think voice to text is really the next technological innovation that we're waiting for to be really good. Right now, it's not so great. We're about to, in a minute, you'll see, or a few seconds, you'll see some other examples that I hope are entertaining. But once voice to text becomes really good, then the mobile device becomes a really powerful tool, right? They can compose with their voice. Many of you probably had the English professor in the past who would make you read the papers aloud to you. And I don't do that anymore, although I tell the students to read the papers aloud. But with all these different advantages to a mobile app, with good voice to text, the students can use the tool anywhere. They can compose anywhere, right? And that's in the digital native age, that's what they want. They want to be able to do it on demand when it works for them. So I have some examples here you see on the screen. This is just a kind of a mock-up of the kind of things that would be possible with the app that's designed for creative assignments. I'm less concerned with the nuts and bolts of what kind of window they type in on the screen or what kind of grammar checker there is, but how to create assignments that take advantage of different app capabilities, right? And so this magnificent mile, maybe it's not a good example for GPS because it's a straight line, but you could put in different locations that they stop at, they take notes, they take photos, they create a voice essay based on their findings that day as they're walking around outside using their phone. Oh, here go the slides again. Okay, Google, help me help my students. And if Google responds here and we're able to get this app going, well, at the end here we'll have happy, engaged students who are using their communication device for more, that they use all the time informally. They can use it for more formal, they can use it for the classroom, they can use it for the workplace, and they can pull that mobile device into the classroom and engage with their peers there and have student success. Well, most of the students will be engaged. You can't get them all. Thank you, and I hope my sermon was somewhat intriguing. Thanks.
And our next presenter, Mapping a Writing Community, Patricia Medved, St. John's University.
Obviously, I didn't invent Google Map Engine, but I did come up with an innovative way to bring it to the classroom. So when we first meet new people, invariably one of the first questions we ask them is, where are you from? I'm sure that over the last few days you've asked and answered that question dozens and dozens of times. And usually the answer kickstarts a pretty good conversation. You talk about where you teach, where you're from, where you went to school, and eventually you'll find a mutual connection, a colleague who went there or taught there, or knows somebody who gave a presentation there. It's the kind of conversation that assures us that we are part of a larger network or community. And it's also the first step in the process of getting to know each other. The places we are from shape us in profound ways, whether we are proud and nostalgic or running away from those places as fast as we can. When you know where someone is from, when you can situate them in a specific locale, you begin to feel you know something about them. Recent scholarship has pointed to the value of exploring both the physical and metaphysical places of student composing. Along with that is a call to have students move from simply consuming to producing visual representations of information. Meanwhile, we are being challenged to question the subjective reality represented in the maps we encounter, while we tactically re-prescribe the spaces of our everyday lives. These considerations provide the theoretical foundation for the classroom activity that I call mapping a writing community. On the first day of class, many of us will begin with an icebreaker of some kind, a way to help students relax and begin to get to know each other. So my big innovative approach here is to have students use Google Maps and together to create a class map. Google Map Engine is an interface that allows users to create, customize, and save their own maps. The maps can be personalized by searching for locations and adding markers. Titles, descriptions, even images can be added to each of the markers. All a user needs to access it is a Gmail address, and the maps can be easily shared and edited by multiple users. The best way to learn Google Maps Engine is to play around with it, which is what we do in my first year writing class on that first day. I begin with a brief introduction to the technology and walk them through how to add markers, by beginning with a marker for the university in our classroom. Then they come up in groups and talk about a few places that they would like to add to the maps. They can add a favorite restaurant, vacation spots, their grammar school, really any place that they think helped to make them, them. And after a few minutes, each group takes a turn coming to the podium. They add their Gmail address, and some students were a little worried. They thought they'd mess it up because they weren't really very good with technology. But their group members jumped right in to help them, and it didn't take anyone more than a few seconds to figure out how to mark their spots on the map. They also seemed to bond pretty quickly as they worked together. We take a few minutes for each group to introduce themselves to the class and click on their individual markers to explain their chosen locations. For homework, they go back to the map, add a few markers, plus visual images, and at least 2 or 3 with a written description of the place's significance. Most of the students will click around the map to check out what everyone else in the class put. 2 students discovered they both wanted to claim Chinatown as their own. Several others discovered they weren't alone in traveling halfway around the world to attend St. John's. The exercise became a visual and concrete way to start the process of building a community in the classroom. The payoffs are that it brings a visual, interactive, and digital component to a fairly static writing assignment of the personal narrative or self-reflection. Students depict their background geographically, bringing the spatial turn, if you will, to composition. It gives students a quick, down and dirty introduction to a new technology that allows for a digital visual representation of information. Students can adapt it in all kinds of ways, academic and practical, like mapping sites of cultural interest in their own physical spaces. It's an interesting and fun way to get conversation started, to bring in group work, to have students move around the classroom a bit, and perhaps most significantly, to see the diversity in the classroom. The map becomes a dynamic representation of location. So while each of us identifies as from various places and coming from all different influences, we are situated together in the classroom with the shared goals of learning what it means to be college writers. And there I messed up the Ignite by about 10.5 seconds, I think.
And our third presenter, the Pathways to Freedom Digital Narrative, Deborah Mutnick, Long Island University, Brooklyn.
Pathways to Freedom is a year-long learning community for first-year students at LIU Brooklyn that links composition and history with a focus on African American history, especially in Brooklyn, from before the Revolutionary War to the 1960s Civil Rights Movement. It started in 2011 when 6 LIU Brooklyn faculty were invited to participate in the Brooklyn Historical Society's Students and Faculty in the Archives, SAFA, a project to bring first-year college students into the archives to learn about Brooklyn history and archival research. These students are visiting the Othmer Library at BHS, studying slave bills of sale in Brooklyn from the late 18th and early 19th centuries. They are, in Laurie Grobman's words, rhetorical citizen historians. In spring of 2012, I received an NEH Digital Humanities Startup Grant to create the Pathways to Freedom digital narrative, a mobile application mapping oral histories of Brooklyn civil rights activists in time and space. Eventually, this website will be accessible to the public through our library homepage. The mobile app, a cross-disciplinary, cross-institutional effort that relied heavily on the help of a computer science colleague, can be viewed on a computer or a phone and includes a timeline, map view, videos, and photos. The timeline started in 1790 when fully 1/3 of the population of Brooklyn, Kings County, was enslaved, a little-known fact that dispels the myth that slavery and later Jim Crow was only a Southern phenomenon. We spend a lot of time in the learning community discussing the New York State 1799 Act for the gradual abolition of slavery, one of several pieces of legislation in the North that reflected both the history of slavery in those states and their ambivalence toward abolition. The timeline currently goes to 1963, when the Brooklyn Congress of Racial Equality, CORE, and an alliance of black ministers held a militant protest for 3 weeks, blocking construction of the State University of New York's Downstate Medical Center in protest of its failure to hire black and Puerto Rican construction workers. The map uses Google to plot events spatially, so you can click on a balloon and find artifacts, news articles, photos, flyers, etc., about a protest, a rally, or some other event. Click on 1038 Union Street and see Brooklyn Core protesters sitting in at a building to protest unfair housing. The campaign against housing discrimination also sent white testers to rent apartments from landlords who had refused to rent to black people. Click the balloon on Lafayette Avenue and find out about this Tompkins Square rally in the Bedford-Stuyvesant neighborhood of Brooklyn called to mobilize protesters after Sunday morning services to join the picket lines at SUNY Downstate. G2WUC, also known as Leslie R. Campbell, was an LIU alum, a member of Brooklyn Core, a founding member of the New York State chapter of the National Black United Front, the founder of Uhuru Sasso Shule, Freedom Now School, and the East, a cultural organization and jazz venue that celebrates people of African descent. He also played a key role in the Ocean Hill-Brownsville struggle over community control of schools in 1968. Here he is photographed with the LIU students who took his oral history in 2012. Rhianne Kirchner was born in Liverpool, England, and immigrated first to Canada and then to Brooklyn in 1955. She joined Brooklyn Core in 1961, and among other roles served as a tester. Major Owens represented Brooklyn's 11th Congressional District in the U.S. House of Representatives from 1983 to 2007. He also served as president of Brooklyn Core briefly and was a lifelong civil rights activist. Underscoring the urgency of the Pathways Project, all 3 of these narrators died in 2013. Born in 1917, Esther Cooper Jackson is now 98. In the 1940s, she worked with the Southern Negro Youth Congress's voting project in Birmingham, Alabama. Later, with W.E.B. Du Bois, among others, she edited and co-founded the political and literary journal Freedom Ways. Yvonne Harmon is a Brooklyn resident who describes herself as an ordinary person who we found to be quite extraordinary and who at a certain point said she just had to join Brooklyn Core. Eleanor Stein was born in 1946. She was a member of Brooklyn Core's youth group in the early 1960s and recalls protesting against racist hiring practices at Ebbinger's, a popular Brooklyn bakery. She went on to join SDS and the Weather Underground and is currently an administrative law judge in Albany, New York. Based on interviews with G2WUC, Rhianne Kirchner, and Yvonne Harmon, we made a short film about the SUNY Downstate protests called We Shall Not Be Moved, Downstate 63, which can be viewed on Vimeo at the URL on your handout, which you don't have, but I'll give to you. This last picture is by Bob Edelman, a photographer who documented the civil rights movement. Its jubilant celebration of freedom reflects a form of poetic public discourse, an attempt through address, one we aim to join through pathways to realize a world that does not yet exist. Thank you.
Don't worry, folks. We're running right on time. You will have the chance to ask these lovely folks questions. So our 4th presenter, what department are you with? How some English people, there's quotes around that title, invented the world's first mobile eye tracking and control system. Dr. Brian Still, chairman and co-founder, Grinbath LLC.
I put the quotes in there. So it's me that did that. So we made an eye tracking system from scratch. You can wear it, and it's pretty cool. But every time I talk about it to anybody who's not in my department, one of the first questions I'm asked is, what department are you with? In fact, the other day, we were talking about our eye tracking system, which, by the way, is now set up so that we're working on it so it will detect concussions in 10 seconds, which is really cool, right? And as I was explaining how it worked and talking about how it follows, the eye follows the reticle on the screen as it moves around, some of it's up there, it's scientific stuff. And I explained in great detail how it works and how abnormal eye movement is a sign of mild traumatic brain injury, and you can get these abnormal results with our unit. When I finished and I gave what I thought was a great talk, at the back of the room there was a dude and his hand was up, and I was like, okay, this is awesome. He's going to ask me about how we, geometrically calibrate the eye. And he said, what department are you with? And my reaction, because it's a trope in my life, is, I've heard it so many times before, this question over and over again, that I don't know what to do necessarily when I hear it. It's often something where I explain, well, I do this, and we do a lot of things in there, but it's really more about what that dog is doing right now that's my reaction. It's about the amusement. He's a little excited. And at the same time, it's like, oh. And in fact, actually, if I had a nickel for every time somebody asked me that, I would beat them with the bag of nickels. I've been asked that so many times, and it hasn't changed. We started in 2010. It's 2015. That story was a week ago where they asked us. And my response in my head is this, is that, yes, I'm from an English department. We innovate there all the time. We have to. We solve problems all the time. That's what we do as teachers, as members of the profession, as researchers. It doesn't change the fact that I doubt when I hear those questions. I scream inside my head all the time, like this poor child who was attacked by, I think, a donkey. I'm thinking more classically of Munch, right? And Munch's great scream painting, because there is a lot of doubt. There's this thing where you wonder whether or not English people should do this, and you're trying really hard to make it work. But then I think of another response that I often think of is that, yes, I don't know what I'm doing, and if you had asked me at the beginning, I would have a great answer, but I don't have one now. But there's Munch again, and this is classical. Munch writes, not paints. Munch talks about this idea that what we're supposed to do when we live as artists or anything else is try to unveil our heart. And Grinbath, the company we created, and the eye tracking is about trying to do something for the world. We didn't raise enough money when we started. We tried to create hardware, which nobody does anymore, which was in some ways a mistake. We had engineers build bad things for us. We had trouble finding enough people to help us, and we never had enough money. But I don't regret a single instance of it now 4 or 5 years later. You have to take risk. Elon Musk was talking about this the other day. If you see a problem, you have to solve the problem. If you have a potential to change the world, you change the world. Or you don't give up when the Germans bomb Pearl Harbor. You keep on going, because you're going to be set with obstacles, and even though you're from an English department, you can make things just because you can. And if you can do it, you should try to do it. And in fact, we can fly a drone with our eyes, or you can too when you wear our device. We have helped people who cannot use their hands when they wear our device. In fact, if you see here in a second on the slide, the child on the left used a pencil. He was the best essay writer at his school, but he typed with a pencil. And he wears our device now, and it allows him to move his hands. The man on the right was a former NFL football player who has ALS, and now he can type his diary because of what we've done. We've sold products around the world. We've patented technologies. We've built a head-mounted, battery-powered unit. And, ironically, despite the questions that's asked all the time, we happen to be from an English department. We haven't made it. We still may not make it. We're always looking for money. There's handouts. There's hats at the door. And the screaming is still just overwhelming. But we're not going to stop. Not yet.
And our last presenter before our question break and back to the beer bar. My reviewers, Joe Moxley from the University of South Florida.
This is a much larger crowd than I expected. This is great. Thank you, Joyce Carter. It's a privilege to be here. I'm here to talk about my reviewers. In some ways, I've been working on this since I was in middle school, but particularly in graduate school, when I used to say to my graduate professor, "Are you still reading this paper?" in brackets, and sometimes he wouldn't put the check. I think that for a lot of people, response to writing is an alienating experience. You feel very alone, and you don't understand the comments that you're getting. So I thought about, well, as a teacher and as a student and as an administrator, how can I develop tools that will improve feedback? Because if we can improve feedback, I think we can improve critical thinking and so forth, and writing. So we've developed a pretty broad tool. We've been using it since 2009, about 300 or 400 teachers, and it has a lot of features. It has peer review and team projects. This is an example of a document markup page, which has your standard PDF. We can handle any kind of rubrics that people want, because everybody wants to customize. And
all right, so now we're going to talk about something called wordiness. Well, what is wordiness? This is what happens when writers use more words than are necessary in order to make the point. It's usually a stylistic issue, but it can be problematic when it's interfering with
So we created community comments, about 200 of them. We're also trying to aggregate and visualize peer review data in new ways. I mean, although we've been working on it since 2009, we're still very much a startup, and we're trying to figure out how can we improve peer review, because I don't think we really concentrated on peer review as much as possible. One thing we're asking our writers to do is to summarize what the reviews are and to think about ways that they can take those reviews to improve their documents instead of just, oh yeah, that was kind of helpful. So we've been looking at ways that this tool, now that we've used it for 300,000 documents, we've been trying to figure out ways that improves critical thinking and to measure it. And we've got very good proof that it does improve critical thinking and research, that demonstrates that improves writing. And we've also been able to look at transfer over time. So we've been working with the Office of Institutional Effectiveness to make evidence-based curriculum changes. And I think it's going really well. We have a number of studies that we've published, some that are in the works. But we're able to sort of contradict or respond to the idea that we're not really improving writing, because we very much are improving writing. And so, all of a sudden, like, what is big data? Well, it's not terabytes maybe in writing studies, but we have about 300,000 documents that have been marked up. And I've argued that this is, it's like having a Hubble telescope before it was fixed, in the sense that, we're beginning to think about, well, okay, what can we learn about how people work together and what feedback is helpful? We're comparing the student feedback to the teacher feedback, and we're looking at correlations, and we're finding interesting things about the importance of the spread of the scores. And now, the big question is, well, how do you take that information and give it back to students so that it can improve their writing? And it's been very interesting. We have very good evidence based on 117,000 teacher comments that our teachers are thinking about substance and not grammar. And, they are thinking about format. We can't get away from that. And we have evidence that over time they improve when they give presentations. But we're also finding a reset effect, which does affirm subjectivity. We're working with quite a few universities right now, and that's been really gratifying. This is a few of the schools, but probably 20 schools. At USF, we're working with about 8,000 students, and altogether about 12,000 students, which is fun. And we're also holding colloquiums to think about big data and writing studies, which has been very interesting, making connections and thinking about development of writing across cultures. You can pilot my reviewers if you wish. We're very robust, and we can handle that. So thank you very much. This has been great.
Okay, our next speaker, presentation titled, Argument as Game Building in the Burkean Parlor. David Fishery, Emory University, and Joseph Williams, who's not here with us this evening, University of Arkansas at Little Rock.
Will you walk into my parlor, said the student to her source. Kenneth Burke argued that we can understand human action as an unending conversation. Quote, you listen for a while, you decide that you caught the tenor of the argument, and then you put in your oar. Reviewing a cross-institutional sample of student writing, Sandra Jameson and Rebecca Moore Howard found that 94% of the citations derive solely from sentence-level work with sources, and that 77% of the citations reference material no deeper than page 3. So, how do we help students engage with sources more deeply? Informed by our past work with building serious games, our current web application helps students compose with rather than copy from sources. Student authors dramatize scholarly conversations within our game of progression. Games are set in a series of interconnected rooms. The student author fills these rooms with conversing people. Players, who might be peers or an instructor, can 1. Click on speakers to initiate a conversation, and 2. Watch conversations unfold like Facebook threads. Depending on the complexity of the conversation, players may also 5. View media objects that the interlocutors use as exhibits, and 6. Shape the conversation's path and unlock doors to other rooms by choosing a branch. The author interface helps students build sections, rooms, and conversations. Authors drag and drop boxes representing rooms to change their arrangement within a section of the building. We derive the idea of the interconnected rooms from ancient rhetoric's method of Loki for aiding memory. So, on the left is where the game author adds the speakers. These speakers utter dialogue lines that comprise conversations taking place in each room. On the right is a bibliographic journal that grows as a player proceeds through the rooms. So, to create a line of dialogue, the game author selects a speaker, number 1, creates an utterance, number 2, and then number 3, optionally attaches media objects and or a key that enables a player to open a door to another room. A stage direction enables the game author to evoke details about the room's physical characteristics or the nonverbal actions speakers undertake. Here, the author placed the players in a room where she dramatized the Think Aloud protocol employed by Linda Flower and John Hayes. Here's the workhorse of conversation development, where the author drags and drops utterances into a dialogue tree. This slide shows the structure of a conversation that takes place when a player clicks on Marilyn Cooper's avatar in the player interface. Indented utterances are rejoinders. We built Article the Game using a programming framework called Rails, which is a set of software libraries that extend the Ruby programming language. Rails helped us build a prototype by providing ready-made solutions to problems commonly confronted by application developers. So we introduced students to the game authoring experience by having them play one or more sections of a demonstration game. For a first-year composition course, the demonstration game includes rooms filled with conversations about logos, ethos, and pathos. Our pilot study of the application involved a graduate-level course in composition theory. Game construction was a writing-to-learn exercise designed to scaffold the composition of a conference proposal that employed John Swales's creating a research space model. So building conversations in this pilot study caused students to return to sources multiple times. As one participant narrates, I have a character or a player take a stance, and I have to say, oh, how does the other character respond? So I go back to the research, so a little bit of engagement with sources. Students not only use the conversations to dramatize a Swalesian research gap, but they also deployed sections and rooms as a way of producing an outline. This student author says, I think I've revised my game maybe 4 times after I gleaned the idea of trying to create an outline. Then finally, students who were lukewarm about the course and its content found that building a game helped them engage. This student author states, I hate all of those articles. It's just not my speed. But the technology stuff made it a lot more fun for me, for the way my brain works. So our goal for version 2 of this application, which we're calling the Burkean Parlor, is to develop a mechanic that enables students to think about how and why they'll integrate sources in their drafts. We also want to provide software support for moving text and other objects from game to draft. In version 2, students will compile speaker and source data in Zotero, and we'll pull it into our application using the API. Joseph Bizup's BEAM model informs a Zotero tagging scheme in which sources are characterized as background, exhibit, argument, and/or method. In one possible design, the Burkean Parlor provides student authors with 4 separate mechanics for shaping background, exhibit, argument, and method materials into playable experiences. The original version of our application, then, would serve as a mechanic for dramatizing argument sources. Bizup claims that the best academic papers are those that analyze specific exhibits to further conversations embodied in argument sources. In another approach, then, we might revise our implementation of the conversation metaphor to help students foreground the rhetorical purposes of their sources. Thank you.
And our next presentation, Eli Review and the Power of Peer Learning, Bill Hart Davidson, Michigan State University.
I didn't say anything yet. I'm happy to talk to you today here at the Ignite Showcase. Thank you, Joyce, about Eli Review. But I want to start with a question. What does writing or learning in writing look like? Something like this. Okay, not this graceful, usually. But what you see are people performing and learning together. And the most powerful resource they have when they're doing that is one another. They see each other, and this is Vygotsky's idea of peer scaffolding. Look at what happens. A peer recognizes for just a minute a more capable peer and bing, learning. Now the problem with that is that dancing, a little different than writing. What do you see in this picture? Or rather, what don't you see? Writing is difficult to see because some of it happens up here, some of it happens right here in front of me. It's harder to share what those moves look like. So when we think about what we can't see, just you as the teacher, can you tell who's writing? Can you tell who's revising? Can you tell who's giving feedback or good feedback? Can you tell who the others think is the one to follow? So look one more time. If you can't see that stuff, neither can your students. And the problem with that is learning happens in real time. That feedback loop has to close quickly. And then we haven't had a resource for that until now. Welcome to Eli. Eli is a live feed for peer response, peer feedback, and it drives peer learning. And that's all it does. But that's a pretty powerful thing. And what we tried to do when we made Eli as writing teachers is build a resource that lets that power of feedback work for us as instructors, because usually dance studios have instructors too. But I need to see what's going on, and I need to know who I can talk to and who I can leave alone. This is what my class used to look like before Eli. Trouble is, the research says it should look a little bit different. It should look a little bit more like the second version of the donut. And there's a reason for that, right? Because in that right moment, you're alone, more or less. But when you're doing review and you're doing revision with the feedback of all the other people, you're in that zone of proximal development. So this is what a paper should look like unfolded when we roll that donut out. And it shouldn't happen just once per paper. It should happen multiple times. Now that's tricky unless you have a little technical support. You need some coordinative support. But even more, you need confidence that that feedback is good. And what that lets me do as a teacher is focus on those high-value activities. I can keep students in that zone almost all the time. So those aha moments, as Dawn here, one of our high school teacher users, says, can happen not just once every so often, but every day, multiple times a day. And when Jeff talks about when we select the moments to finally intervene, the moments to lean in as opposed to lean out, I like to say, we can do so knowing we picked the right moment, the one with the most oomph. Now, the only way to do that is to have some evidence at your disposal. Eli isn't magic. Eli pays attention to the same moments in every individual writer's process that you, as a great teacher, pay attention to. But it does it in real time. So those moments are on the screen up there. And what we present back to you is the information that results. So you get to see what you like to see. You get to see some numbers, right? But you get to see their writing. Not just their drafts, but their writing about their writing. They're writing to each other. And when you see it more often, when you see it 10 times, for example, over the space of 3 weeks, I can intervene in precisely the moment that I need to. I can intervene early to head off a problem. And that means that my class is a little bit more like actually a yoga studio than a dance studio, because I don't need everybody on the right foot doing the same steps. There's more than one way to dance this dance. But I do need everybody to improve their practice, right? And to get stronger. I need to see the words. I need to see what they're thinking about their writing, and I need to see it today. Not next week when it finally comes in, but today. And that's what Eli does for us. We made Eli for ourselves, but today we offer Eli to you. We have 30,000 people this semester using Eli, which is a thrill. And we would like you to be among those people using Eli, and we'll make it easy for you. So thank you very much.
Presentation number 3. Civic Engagement, C-Style, Empowering Slacktivist Rhetors to Enact Social Change. Laura Anderson, Georgia State University.
The first step is admitting American democracy has a problem. An uninformed, disengaged, gullible electorate, polarized candidates paying millions for 15-second sound bites on television no one watches, alternative content universes, personalized, pre-screened, undemocratic representation, gerrymandered districts, a shadow industry of astroturfers and influence peddlers carrying congressional favor and manufacturing public consent. Our largest search and social platforms exist to generate clicks, to generate profits. There's nothing wrong with that, but it doesn't necessarily promote the best in civic debate. But we who believe in the transformative power of discourse communities could design a platform that does. We could apply the values of RetComp scholarship to set conventions and incentives to promote critical thinking, rhetorical rivaling, and a standard of evidence like Socratic debate. I know what you're thinking. Wikify government. That's kind of crazy. It's really big and really complex, and are you sure you want to empower the average voter? We can't all be Lawrence Lessig. But witness the Wikipedia model. Complex multimodal compositions with hundreds of authors, inconceivable levels of detail, expertise, and man-hours. The gatekeeping, revision, and enforcement are crowdsourced, a radical consensus-building meritocracy. Hypertext and multimodal compositions increasingly enable authors to share confirmatory evidence and link to primary sources. New multimedia genres are expanding the reach of public dialogue. This is rich, fertile soil for improving civic rhetoric. Wikipedia might be our public square, our mainstream media. No, I'm not suggesting that we upvote referenda like Reddit posts or elect the next president via Facebook poll, but that's not the place to start. We need a platform and a political action committee. Last year's Citizens United ruling lifted restrictions on political giving. Yes, Citizens United focused on corporations, but corporations aren't things. They're just one possible configuration of people and capital toward a common goal. If money buys elections, a Senate seat costs about $10.5 million. House seats, as you'd expect, are a fraction of that at $1.7 million. These are the going rates to elect our representatives. A few years ago, that sum seemed insurmountable, but the Ice Bucket Challenge raised $8 million in 4 days. And while I'm happy for ALS to get all that attention, they raised more in 1 day than Libertarian candidate Gary Johnson used to fund his 2012 presidential run. This is Kiva, several hundred million in interest-free loans for the developing world, but they do it in teams, aligning behind an identity or an idea. Sometimes these communities cross over from other platforms. What if your momentary outrage over a tweet didn't have to last until Election Day? Would you contribute a few dollars to a plank in a platform instead of a candidate? What if, with Kickstarter, the candidate could only claim the donation if he supports what you voted for? Not everyone agrees that this clicktivism or slacktivism is true civic engagement. Some scholars, notably Malcolm Gladwell, are convinced that frail social media connections can't support radical social change. The last year has shown us exactly how wrong he was. Hierarchies of influence are flattening. Sophisticated media campaigns are enabling totally new forms of social action, for better and for worse. From ISIS recruiting to I voted badges, born digital social momentum is resulting in real-world social change. Many pieces of this tool exist and have open APIs we can use. I Side With breaks down platforms into claims. Open States already knows the bills your senator is voting on today and from whom she takes donations. The moral is this. I've come to believe that whether you dump ice water on your own head to cure human suffering or cut the head off a journalist and cause human suffering, it will likely be because an online consensus-building community convinced you to. My dissertation is thoroughly post-disciplinary in the sense that I will take help from anyone. I want input from UX specialists and behavioral economists, cognitive scientists, and designers about interface features that promote critical thinking. Given that, why does this project belong at SEAS? I believe we are equipped to harness the power of consensus communities and emergent media to meet a counter-public need. So this is the project that I will be begging you for help with, to build, to design, to refine. It's an ambitious, omnimodal dissertation, and maybe, just maybe, the start of a revolution.
And our fourth presentation, The Game of Writing, Roger Graves, University of Alberta.
Thanks, Shelley, and thanks. So the game of writing is something that Jeffrey Rockwell, who is a humanities computing and a gamification expert, and Heather Graves, who's out here, and I have worked on to try to bring gamification to the teaching of writing. This slide shows you the first version of the program that Jeffrey Rockwell put together with a grad student who was not trained in composition studies or writing studies. And two things to pay attention to are bragging at the bottom and competition at the upper. I think it's your right. So that was version 1. It was September 2013. We started on version 2, where we did some design scenarios, and then we're looking for a class to test this out on. Our idea was a small class, and the Dean of Arts came back with a large class. We've got 16 people involved in this project, and I think there's two things to pay attention to here. One is that the IP that we developed is in the design of the course, but it's also in the design of the software application that we worked on. So what's the problem we're trying to solve here? Basically, we've had 8 years of budget cuts, either flat or actual cuts, and we can't teach first-year writing and make it make sense at the current levels of costing. So what we're trying to do here is to address that is centralize course development by having one course being developed and run by different people. And then also, this is the important thing, I think, to redistribute the labor of giving formative feedback. So Grit, the software that we developed, is a platform, should be thought of, I think, as a platform that can be implemented on any number of courses. So writing studies, English literature, health psychology. Whatever writing you're doing, you can do it in that platform. Our take on this was to go to gamification. That's what Rockwell was mostly interested in, and it makes sense to us too, because the goal is to motivate students to write more, comment more, and more importantly, read more and learn more about the writing. So one of the ways we're doing this is we've got these various leaderboards here. And what we're trying to do here is to motivate students to share and comment on each other's writing. There's different categories in those leaders. So one goal here is to track student progress. So we want to know, we want the students to know how they're doing. We don't necessarily, we know it, but we want them to know more importantly. We want to provide some feedback mechanisms, and we want to automatically reward students for behaviors that we want to see. So the fuel gauge there on the near side to me shows them their progress on an assignment and also through the course. And then those are some of the badges that we've had designed there. The rabbits indicate you got your stuff done on time. So that's what this is, as opposed to an LMS system, this is a composing system. So here's the composing window. Students select an assignment. It shows up here on the near side. They make notes, they make plans, and they compose in that screen. There's learning activities which are available on a separate Google site, a separate window that pops up. So as they're working, they can click on a link which will take them to the section of the textbook which is related to the work that they're doing. So in that way we've embedded it. So this shows you the Google site. It's got over 100 videos, exercises, slide decks, you name it. And they're organized by the module that the students are working on over on this side. So one of the key things we're doing here is we're trying to use social commenting, the same kind of social media kind of idea. So what you've got here is a text that's been highlighted, and then the comment that they're making on it. Students can thumb up, thumb down, or reply to a comment. Instructors can pin a comment, so if they do, it's going to show up at the top of that list and stay there. So comments, instructors make comments, peers make comments, and then also paid peer tutors are making comments. So what we're trying to do essentially here is disperse that comment function. One of the big costs of running a writing course is the feedback cycle. And so we're trying to get students in the course, and we train them. There's a whole module for training them to do it. We've got the paid peer tutors who've taken the course and so on. The pin up that we've circled there on this slide, the key thing there is it shows students what we think is a good comment if you made the comment, and if you're the recipient of the comment, it shows you better do something about this. So that's our way of interceding there. This toolbar, this shows all these students who have completed an assignment. It shows who's completed and who hasn't. So at a glance, we can scroll down this list. We had 150 students in the class and see who's behind and who's ahead. So the early returns are positive. We got 4 out of 5 on the student evaluations. And as one student said, which was really crazy, is earning badges is strangely satisfying. We don't ask questions, we just accept it. If they learned, that was great. Thank you.
And I love that our last presenter this evening will return us back into the fold of the conference because her title connects back to the theme. Inventing Versatile PhD, the Risks and Rewards of Starting a Business. Paula Chambers, founder and CEO of the Versatile PhD.
Well, the academic pipeline looks like this now. PhDs go many places, and they do not only go straight into, or sometimes ever into, the professoriate. Grad students don't figure this out, though, until the last year or maybe 2 while they're writing their dissertations. Back in 1999, when I was dissertating in rhetoric and composition at Ohio State, I knew that I didn't want to go on the academic job market, but I didn't know what else I could do. So I started a listserv called Work for Us about non-academic careers for humanities PhDs. I didn't know how groundbreaking it was at the time, but it won a Woodrow Wilson Innovation Award. So I finished, I graduated, and I became a grant writer, and I did very well at that. But then in the late 2000s, I learned more about what an impact Work for Us had made, and I decided to abandon my fundraising career and start Versatile PhD, transforming a listserv into a web-based career education resource specifically for PhDs in the research disciplines. On Versatile PhD, members can join a supportive community. They can read job listings appropriate for PhDs. They can attend local meetups, and there's a tool called the PhD Career Finder. So the discussion forums, the community, are very supportive, and there's a code of conduct that ensures no flaming, and I enforce it. Don't have to do it very often, but there are a lot of post-academics in the community. It's not just grad students talking to grad students. The jobs board has PhD appropriate jobs. They don't actually necessarily require a PhD, but they are the kind of job that a PhD would enjoy and that would lead to a satisfying career. The local area meetups are organized entirely by volunteers. There's a meetup in almost every major city now across the United States and even some in Canada. It's for in-person fellowship between grad students and new PhDs. And the PhD Career Finder, you can see, you can't read it from there, but it's a list of all the possible non-academic careers by discipline. Humanities careers on the left, STEM careers on the right. And when you click on a career path, you can read a description of what the work is, how to get in, what are some entry points, where can it lead, and what kind of a person does well in it. And on the right, how to break in. That's the premium content that shows exactly, step by step, how to break in. The premium content includes panel discussions, which are archived, written, threaded discussion board discussions with 4 or 5 PhDs who have all gone into a specific, the same career. So they answer questions so that you get a detailed perspective on that career. The hired items, these are hiring success stories, which are complete non-academic dossiers that a resume, a cover letter, any related documents showing how a real PhD got a real non-academic job, including a narrative detailing the process. And the bios are longer-term stories of post-academic PhD success. The business model is, oh, please advance. Oh yes, there's a premium feature also that institutional subscribers get, the Power Search feature. That allows a person to search for multiple criteria at a time, like find me all of the historians working in the nonprofit sector in Chicago. The business model is institutional subscriptions. The university gives an annual subscription fee, that's my revenue, and they also give staff time to promote Versatile PhD to their grad students. We give access to the premium content and support and reminders to help them build awareness. The risks that I took to create this were years of unpaid work. I've been doing it 5 years. I just started taking a salary in January. My life savings, my academic reputation, and my self-esteem. Nothing much. The rewards have been tremendous. First of all, the external rewards, helping more people than ever. 50,000 people now belong to my website. And I'm changing academic culture. I am part of the movement to help make non-academic careers acceptable for PhDs. The inward directed rewards, now I'm supporting myself plus 1 employee, incredible personal growth, starting a business, oh my God, and national visibility. Rewards part 3, the gypsy's curse. Some of the rewards I didn't ask for. It has been incredibly stressful. Starting and running a business is much harder than I ever expected. I actually don't love technology, and so starting a web-based business, you might question the wisdom. I had hoped I would fall in love with technology. I have not. But anyway, it is hard, it is stressful. Success is a mixed bag. When you take a risk, you're stepping into the unknown, and that involves being willing to accept mixed and messy consequences. You will transform, but I am glad that I took the risk. Thank you.
Everyone, I am ecstatic to say we are on time. I'm hoping Joyce, how many panels do you go to that we emphatically are like, we got it on time, and you had chat time. So I do want to say a couple things. One, we do have a couple minutes. I don't think there's anyone coming in this room after us. So again, all of our presenters are up here. Let's take a minute and a round of applause for all 10 presenters. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of the evening.